NEC section 230.24b addresses the vertical clearance requirements for service drops. Specifically, it states that service drops must maintain a minimum clearance of 12 feet above ground level or other readily accessible surfaces. In the scenario described, the service drop runs parallel to a driveway, which is considered a readily accessible surface. The existing service drop has a height of 10 feet 5 inches, which is less than the required 12 feet. Therefore, the existing service drop does not meet the NEC requirements. There are several options to consider for achieving compliance. Firstly, you could install a mast. Installing a mast will elevate the service drop to meet or exceed the 12-foot clearance requirement above the driveway. This is the most straightforward approach to ensure compliance with the NEC. Secondly, leaving the service unchanged is an option, but it's not compliant. Maintaining the existing service drop height of 10 feet 5 inches would not comply with NEC section 230.24b. This could result in safety hazards and potential code violations. Thirdly, you could try to obtain a variance. It might be possible to obtain a variance from the authority having jurisdiction, also known as the AHJ, if special circumstances warrant a deviation from the code. However, obtaining a variance for a standard residential service upgrade is generally unlikely. Inspectors' opinions may vary on this topic. However, most inspectors would likely require the service drop to be raised to the minimum 12-foot clearance. To clarify, a service drop is the overhead conductor from the last utility pole or other aerial support to the service point at the building or structure being supplied. The service point is defined as the point of connection between the facilities of the serving utility and the premises wiring. The readily accessible surface refers to any surface that people can easily access, such as driveways, sidewalks, patios, and decks. The minimum clearance requirements are designed to prevent accidental contact with the energized service conductors, reducing the risk of electrical shock or electrocution. When evaluating the vertical clearance, consider the maximum sag of the service conductors. Sag is the vertical distance between the highest and lowest points of a conductor span. The sag will vary depending on the conductor size, span length, conductor tension, and temperature. As the temperature increases, the conductor will expand and sag more. The NEC requires that the vertical clearance be maintained under conditions of maximum sag. Installing a mast involves several steps. Firstly, select a suitable mast. The mast must be adequately sized to support the service conductors and withstand wind and ice loads. Consult with the serving utility for their requirement regarding mast size, material, and installation. Secondly, properly install the mast. The mast must be securely attached to the building structure, typically using bracket or straps. Ensure that the mast is plumb and properly aligned. Thirdly, connect the service conductors. Carefully connect the service conductors to the mast, ensuring proper insulation and weatherproofing. Use appropriate connectors and follow the serving utilities requirements for conductor attachment. Remember to maintain proper clearances. Ensure that the service conductors maintain the required vertical clearance above the driveway and other readily accessible surfaces after the mast is installed. If the existing service drop is too short to reach the mast, it may be necessary to request the serving utility to install a longer service drop. In summary, NEC section 230.24b requires a minimum 12-foot clearance for service drops above readily accessible surfaces like driveways. Installing a mast is the most common method to achieve compliance when the existing clearance is insufficient. Always consult with the AHJ and the serving utility to ensure that the installation meets all applicable requirements. Ignoring the clearance requirements can create safety hazards and potential code violations. The purpose of these clearances is to provide a safe distance between the energized service conductors and people or objects that may come into contact with them. This helps prevent electrical shock and electrocution, ensuring the safety of people and property. In addition to the vertical clearance requirements, the NEC also specifies horizontal clearance requirements for service drops. These clearances are intended to prevent the service drop from coming into contact with buildings, trees, or other objects. The horizontal clearance requirements vary depending on the voltage of the service drop and the type of object being cleared. For example, a 120/240 volt service drop must have a horizontal clearance of at least 3 feet from windows, doors, porches, balconies, and other similar locations. It must also have a horizontal clearance of at least 10 feet from swimming pools, diving platforms, and similar structures. The NEC also specifies clearance requirements for service drops over roofs. The clearance requirements vary depending on the voltage of the service drop and the slope of the roof. For example, a 120/240 volt service drop must have a clearance of at least 8 feet over a roof with a slope of 4 inches in 12 inches or greater. It must also have a clearance of at least 3 feet over a roof with a slope of less than 4 inches in 12 inches. When installing a service drop, it is important to carefully consider all of the clearance requirements to ensure that the installation is safe and code compliant. If you are unsure about any of the clearance requirements, consult with a qualified electrical contractor or inspector. In addition to the mast option, another possibility might involve relocating the service drop. If the existing service drop is located in a position where it is difficult to achieve the required clearances, it may be possible to relocate the service drop to a different location on the property. This may involve moving the point of attachment on the building or requesting the serving utility to relocate the pole from which the service drop originates. Relocating the service drop can be a more complex and costly option than installing a mast, but it may be necessary in certain situations. Before making any changes to the service drop, it is essential to consult with the serving utility and obtain their approval. The serving utility is responsible for the service drop up to the service point, and they will have specific requirements for any changes to the service drop. In some cases, the serving utility may require you to hire a qualified electrical contractor to perform the work. When upgrading an electrical service, it is important to consider the existing electrical panel. If the existing electrical panel is not large enough to accommodate the increased load of the new appliances, it may be necessary to replace the electrical panel with a larger one. The size of the electrical panel is determined by the number of circuits it can accommodate and the maximum amperage it can handle. The NEC provides guidelines for determining the appropriate size of electrical panel for a given application. When replacing an electrical panel, it is essential to ensure that the new panel is properly grounded. Grounding is the process of connecting the electrical panel to the earth, which provides a path for fault current to flow back to the source. Proper grounding helps to protect against electrical shock and electrocution. The NEC specifies the requirements for grounding electrical panels. These requirements include the use of a grounding electrode conductor, which connects the electrical panel to a grounding electrode, such as a ground rod or a metal water pipe. In addition to grounding, it is also important to provide overcurrent protection for the electrical circuits. Overcurrent protection devices, such as circuit breakers and fuses, are designed to protect the electrical circuits from damage caused by excessive current flow. The NEC specifies the requirements for overcurrent protection, including the size and type of overcurrent protection device required for each circuit. When upgrading an electrical service, it is important to obtain the necessary permits from the local building department. Permits are required to ensure that the electrical work is performed in accordance with the NEC and other applicable codes. The building department will typically inspect the electrical work to ensure that it meets the code requirements. Failing to obtain the necessary permits can result in fines and other penalties. The decision to install a mast should also take into account aesthetic considerations. A mast can be visually prominent, and it may affect the appearance of the building. In some cases, it may be possible to minimize the visual impact of the mast by choosing a location that is less visible or by using a mast that is painted to match the color of the building. It is also important to consider the potential for damage to the mast from trees or other objects. The mast should be located in a position where it is not likely to be struck by falling branches or other debris. If there are trees nearby, it may be necessary to trim the trees to provide adequate clearance for the mast. The NEC provides specific guidelines for the installation of service masts, including requirements for the size and type of mast, the method of attachment to the building, and the clearances from other objects. It is important to follow these guidelines carefully to ensure that the mast is installed safely and securely. In addition to the NEC requirements, the serving utility may also have specific requirements for the installation of service masts. These requirements may vary depending on the location and the type of service. It is important to contact the serving utility to obtain their requirements before installing a service mast. When working with electricity, it is important to take all necessary safety precautions. Electricity can be dangerous, and it is important to avoid contact with energized conductors. Always turn off the power before working on electrical equipment. Wear appropriate personal protective equipment, such as insulated gloves and safety glasses. If you are not comfortable working with electricity, hire a qualified electrical contractor to perform the work. Working with electricity can be dangerous, and it is important to take all necessary safety precautions. If you are unsure about any aspect of the electrical work, consult with a qualified electrical contractor or inspector. Do not attempt to perform electrical work that you are not qualified to do. The requirements outlined in NEC Section 230.24 are essential for safety and compliance, ensuring that service drops are installed in a manner that minimizes the risk of electrical hazards. Understanding these requirements is crucial for anyone involved in electrical installations or upgrades. By adhering to these standards, electricians and homeowners can ensure the safety and reliability of their electrical systems. Always consult with local authorities and qualified professionals to ensure that all installations meet the specific requirements in your area. By carefully considering all of these factors, you can ensure that the service drop is installed safely and in compliance with the NEC. Remember to prioritize safety and consult with qualified professionals when working with electricity. The information provided here is for informational purposes only and should not be considered a substitute for professional advice. Always consult with a qualified electrician or electrical inspector before making any changes to your electrical system. A qualified professional can assess your specific situation and provide recommendations that are tailored to your need. By taking the necessary precautions and consulting with qualified professionals, you can ensure that your electrical system is safe and reliable. Always remember that electrical work should only be performed by qualified individuals who have the necessary training and experience. Attempting to perform electrical work without the proper knowledge and skills can be dangerous and can lead to serious injury or even death. Therefore, it is always best to leave electrical work to the professionals. These professionals have the knowledge, skills, and experience necessary to perform the work safely and correctly. They also have the proper tools and equipment to ensure that the work is done efficiently and effectively. By hiring a qualified electrical contractor, you can rest assured that your electrical system is in good hands. Electrical codes and standards are constantly evolving, so it is important to stay up to date on the latest changes. This can be accomplished by attending training courses, reading industry publications, and consulting with qualified professionals. By staying informed about the latest changes, you can ensure that your electrical work is always in compliance with the latest requirements. Compliance with the electrical codes and standards is essential for ensuring the safety and reliability of electrical systems. By following these codes and standards, you can help to prevent electrical hazards and protect people and property from harm. Therefore, it is important to take electrical codes and standards seriously and to always comply with them. In addition to the NEC, there may be other local codes and standards that apply to electrical installations. It is important to be aware of these local requirements and to comply with them as well. Local codes and standards may vary depending on the location, so it is important to check with the local building department to determine the specific requirements that apply in your area. Obtaining the necessary permits and inspections is an important part of any electrical project. Permits are required to ensure that the electrical work is performed in accordance with the applicable codes and standards. Inspections are conducted to verify that the electrical work has been performed correctly and that it meets the code requirements. Obtaining the necessary permits and inspections can help to ensure that your electrical project is safe and compliant. If you have any questions or concerns about electrical safety, it is always best to consult with a qualified electrical professional. Electrical professionals have the knowledge and experience necessary to answer your questions and address your concerns. They can also provide guidance on how to make your electrical system safer and more reliable. Therefore, do not hesitate to contact a qualified electrical professional if you have any questions or concerns about electrical safety.